2013 AP questions for A and B. I'm going to follow the same kind of pattern for these. I won't go like too much in depth with the problem. I'll explain a little bit about the problem. I'm going to do some pseudocode on a sketchbook, and then I'll actually code the response in Replit. Replit won't work, but I'll just at least code this part out, so like that's what it would actually look like. But yeah, we'll get started with A, and then hopefully I'll have some time codes in here on the YouTube version of this. So we're using our writing our get download info method here, and it's going to return the reference to this. Okay, so these are all reference objects, all download info objects that have a few different things. They do have the title, and they should have the number of downloads. Okay. So basically, we just want to return this. If no song is in the download list that matches that, so we're receiving a title, we're taking a title in. Let me get a little bit of sketching going on here. We're taking a title in, goes into our method, and then we're going to get out a download. Let's see, download info object. This is going into our I'm just going to say get download. So get download info, that's the name of the method. But anyways, it takes in a title, and it's going to spit back out the download info for that title. I guess I'm disappearing because I'm switching screens here. And then if it's not there, if something doesn't match that, then it's going to return, the method's going to return null. There's a few different options to do this. What I would do, so basically we want to look through here and say, we take in a string, we're going to look through all these objects, and we're going to need to see if any of the strings, any of the titles match the string that we were given. We can get the title from these download info objects using this method, get title. Okay, so if we go back over to here, so we're sending in a title. Let's say we're sending in a string called title. We're sending this into that, and then we're getting a download info back. There's a couple things. If there, maybe say if song is in, but if song exists, that's a good way of saying that. If the song exists, return download info object. Else, return null. So there's a few different ways of doing this. When we talked in class, we mentioned a few. Well, so what we want to do is we want to look through the list. We have this array list of, we go down to here, we have this array list of download info objects. We want to look through that array list and see if we can find any titles that match ours. So we're definitely going to need a for loop in here. So if we go back over to here, we can do a for loop. So the easiest one that we could do here, maybe I won't even code this. Maybe I'm just going to write it out by hand. We'll say for int I is equal to 0. I is less than the name of the array list. What's the name of our array list here? So this is web music A is the music downloads object. In here, we're going to look for the name of this array list. And I think we might have to go back up to here. We can find the name of the array list right here, download list. Okay, so we want to check download list dot-size I++. And then in here, we want to just check against for every object. And actually, there's an easier way. We could use there's a bunch of different loops we could use here. This is one of the 3 options. We could also use a for loop, or like an advanced for loop, like the for each loop, or we could use a while loop. It's all going to be about the same thing. I kind of like using the for loop here. Okay, so for each one of these i's, we'll do download list dot get I. And so what this is going to do is it's going to retrieve the download info object that's located in each one of these spots in the array list. We're going to get it. And so now you think we have that object we have that object in our hands. And now that's not enough because we need to go check the title. So we can run into here and we can find, okay, for the download info object, we can use this method, get title, to get that. Get title. And so this should return a string for us. Whatever download info object, we're returning the title. Now what you really want to use here is the dot equals method. The dot equals method exists inside of strings, and it's a way to test to see if 2 things are the same. And so I can just pass in my title. And I'll kind of move my pseudocode over here a little bit. So we're going to look through the entire array list. We're taking in our title. We're looking through the entire array list to see if any one of those download info objects has the same title. And so we probably want to throw an if in here. If download list, there's a few different ways that we can do this. So now we're searching through and we're finding the right download info object. There's 2 different ways that we could do this. we could either, in here, we could just, I'll do the easiest way, I guess. We could just return download list dot get. I don't know what's going on here. So we'll just return whatever download list object that was there, and we'll return it to the user. And then we could do at the very end, after we've searched through this whole thing, we can just return null. Key point to remember here is that whenever you do return, you automatically end a method. So what this is going to do is as soon as it hits the first download info object that has the right title, it'll immediately close out the method by sending this back to the user. However, if it makes it all the way through this loop, we've looked through the entire download, we've looked through this entire array list, and we get to the end and we still haven't returned anything, then we'll return null. That's probably the best way of doing this. There's some other ways that you could slightly organize this differently. Like I said, there's different for loops you could use here. A for each loop would actually be really nice here. But this is basically the code for that. Okay. I'm going to kind of look at this versus the answer key provided by the AP. So let me switch over to that tab. Look at the answer key here, this one. So they did basically the same thing as us. We should have included that. I skipped over that because I think it's given to you already. But do make sure that you include the full method header. That is actually a good point here. For this, they used the different for loop. I mean, this one's a little bit easier to use. Not about easier to use, but it's quicker, I guess. So using a for each loop, but it's basically doing the same thing. We're going to get the title. We're going to check to make sure it's equals to title, and then return if that is true, if it is equal to. If the title of that download info object is the same as the title that we got, we'll return that download info object, and otherwise we'll return null. And so that's exactly what we had. Some things to look for in here. So we did this. We went through all those things. We didn't find any bounds errors. That would be like if you set up a bad for loop that maybe went, over too many different elements within the array. Returning the right. Using this get title thing like we did, checking for equality between the title, list object, and title. So what this means is using the dot equals. Don't use like an equal sign. Use dot equals. It'll work out. It's just a better way of doing it. And then works the way that we did. And then searches through the entire thing. So everything we did was we should get full score on that one. Looking at question 1 still, but we're going to look at part B. So part B is, where are we down here? This is where we're going to use this update the downloads info. So basically what we should be doing here is we're going to get in a list of song titles, and then basically we want to look through the download info objects we already have, and if any of the titles that we just received match one of the ones we already have saved, then we're going to increment the number of downloads by 1. If we get a new song in there, it's not existing in the download info array list, then we'll just add on a new object at the end. Okay, so yeah, it's not too bad. There's a few things we'll have to work on in here. Yeah, making a new object in there. Oh, but there is one really crucial part, especially for this AP question. I probably wouldn't mind as much about this, but I don't know. In the AP version, they're going to say you need to use the get download info. So basically, we did that thing in A, we need to use it in B. And it doesn't really matter whether you got A correct or not, you still need to use it acting like it works the way that it should. So whether you coded it right or wrong, they still want you to use that in here. So we need to think about, okay, so that kind of gives us, so if we think about it, that previous thing took in a song title. So like how can we use the work in A to help us in B? Well, in A, it took in a song title, and then we were able to find if there was a download object, if there was a download info object that matched that title. So we could use that in here. So we're kind of doing the same thing. So if it does find it in there, it'll retrieve. If it doesn't find it in there, if it does find it, it'll retrieve the actual object. If it doesn't find it in there, it'll retrieve null. So let's go back to our drawing board here for our sketches. And I think really the first thing that we can do, we won't save that. So we have that well, we already have this, right? We have this get download info. That's the name of that method, right? Just want to make sure. I'm talking about this one, this method. Get download info. Good. Okay. So that one is going to, so it takes in a string. string title, and then it returns object or null. Okay. So if we're taking an array list of strings, and that's kind of what this method is doing, this, there we go here, this part B, it's going to take in, where are we at here? It's going to take in a list of song titles as a parameter, and we're going to increase the download count by 1 or else add it. So in here we have this list, and so we can think of this as an array list is fine, of song titles, and it's going to have these entries in here. Okay. So we can work with this one. This kind of works, right? Because it takes in a title. The only difference between what this thing does and what we need it to do is that this takes in an individual title. We need to run through an entire list. And so what we want to do is we want to have this array list of, and I'm just going to put in a bunch of, I'll just say like song 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one of these are songs. Each one of these have titles. So we want to pass these into the getDownloadInfo method, and then we want to do different things depending on what happens. So one thing we'd want to do here is so we say like for string. So first we want to do is like one loop through song list. And then we want to put songs, we want to put them into that method, right, into this getDownloadInfo method. And then this is where if exists, if we get a download info object, then we want to increment. If it doesn't exist, and that maybe could be our else, we want to create download info object, and then we want to add that to the array list. So it's not too bad. It's pretty similar to what we've already been building off what we've already been working on, but it's just going to we have to make some decisions. Use that previous method and make some decisions. So we're going to say for string s and let's see. Oh, I don't want to do that. Let me go over to here. This is going to be song titles, right? That's the oh yeah. So we're getting in titles. Okay. So for string s in titles, what we want to do is we want to run the get download info for s. So this is going to look through, it's going to use the previous method. If the string exists, if the song exists, then we want to increment. So there's a couple of different ways we could do this. We want to check to see if the song exists. So there's a couple of different ways. So it's either the download info is going to exist and it's going to return us a download info object, or else it's going to return us null. So you know what, I'm going to go a little bit backwards here. I'm going to say if this is equals null, so basically that means it's empty, then we need to go into our array list. And you recall we have that array list for music downloads. We have that array list called download list. So if this is null, which means basically the song doesn't exist already, I want to go to download list. And you know what? I can just create an object directly. I can just say add new download info. I think it's like this, right? We need to scroll back up to here to see how do we create a new one. Download info. It takes in a title, and then it's just going to set the downloads to 1. So new download info. Oh, I'm going to run out of space here. And we'll pass in, actually we don't need quotations, we can just pass in s. And then we'll do an else statement. So real quickly what this is going to do, we pass in this string. We have this list of strings up here. We pass each one of those strings into the getDownloadInfo object. So starting with 1, if that song doesn't exist within the download info list, well, we'll add it, and we're going to create a new download info object called s. A key point here is that like what might be confusing about this is like, well, what's the name? What's the name of this download info object? We actually don't care what its name is. We're just going to put it directly into an array list. we don't need to know what the name is. It's going to get stored onto the array list, and then from there, we really don't care what its name is. So we don't have to say, like, we don't have to give it any kind of special name. We'll just store it inside of the array list, no problem. Now, the other way that could happen, either it's going to be empty or it's going to return us an actual object. If it returns us an actual object, then we can say get dis, right? So this is returning us an object. So you can think like this won't return us an object. Otherwise, this one must return us a download info object. So what that means is we're getting an object back. The song already exists. It already has been downloaded. We just need to increase the number of downloads by 1, which is where we can use this method, get our increment times downloaded. What's it? Increment times downloaded. Increment times downloaded. And that should really be it. We're taking in these strings, and this will just run through, this one method will run through all of these strings in the array list. If the song's not in there, we're going to add it to the list, and otherwise we will just increment the times downloaded. So that should be the entire code. Let's see, I don't think we're missing anything. All right, so let's take a look at the answers. See if we're going to lose any points in here. Okay. Access all titles, so we're doing fine with that. We're using this method, right? So we're using this method from part A. Good. We're incrementing the counts if it's in the download list. Constructs a new download info. It's not in the list. Good. So we did this. We should have done this. Adds constructed. Yeah, so this should be fine. Yeah. So we do kind of these two things at once. We construct a new download object and we add it directly within the same one. So that's the answer to that one. If I wanted to be a little bit, so like this one would work perfectly right. If this doesn't make you feel too comfortable, where we're creating an object while we're adding it to the array list, what we could do is, if we kind of insert up here, maybe I'll do this with a different color, we could do something like, download, that's not a new color, that's a new color. Download info, so we'll make the object called temp equals new download info, and then pass in s. And so this way we're making a download info object called temp, and then we would just directly add temp download list dot add temp. So these two things would be doing the exact same thing. This method, this little bit of code I wrote in blue here, and this would do the same exact thing. We're just breaking, in this case, in the version of blue, we've just broken it down into 2 steps, while in this one we did it entirely in 1. So whichever one makes you the most comfortable, either one's going to work.